Welcome to the Dream Show. I'm Teresa Anderson, and this is episode 288. And I've just finished recording the main part of this podcast with our guest, Gemma Louise, who lives in Siem Reap in Cambodia. We explore her dream, and then we see how it relates to her life, and then she tells us stories from her work as a spiritual coach and person-centered therapist. She's dedicated to helping individuals create fulfilling lives through self-compassion, self-love, and alignment with their values. And as you'll hear, her methods include mindfulness, energy and somatic work, meditation, breath work, and visualization. And she offers sessions focused on providing direction, helping clients remove obstacles, and connecting them with their core values and purpose. As you'll also hear, spirituality is a big part of her work, and she's really passionate about helping clients uncover their soul purpose and what their soul's evolution could be. So first up, we'll have a little chat and you'll hear the dream, and as usual, you hear the dream for the first time that I do. I never know what dream a guest is going to bring. And then we cover all sorts of things about Gemma's life. She brings some lovely case histories, some lovely questions. And at one point, she introduces a little exercise. Well, it's really a question. And I love the question. So after a couple of minutes, I ask her to repeat the question. And I suggest that you might like to press pause on our podcast and consider the question that she gives, because it really is one ripe for self-discovery. But remember, after you've done that, of course, to unpress pause, press play, and continue on with our podcast. So just before we go to our recorded podcast, just a little reminder of the websites. My website is janeteresa.com. That's Teresa without an H. That's my main website. You can hear every episode of The Dream Show that's ever been there. And of course, you can also listen to the most recent episodes of The Dream Show on all the usual podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, and so on. My website, janeteresa.com, is also where you go to find out about all things dreaming and how I can help you with yours and my books, etc. At the end of our chat with Gemma, and also in the show notes, we'll give the contact details for how you can contact Gemma Louise if you'd like to work with her, or if you'd just like to have a bit more of a look at what she actually does. So enough about me, and let's get on with the podcast. Here's Gemma Louise. Welcome to the Dream Show, Gemma.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today.
It's lovely to have you here. And here for me is Hobart. Describe to us a little bit about where here for you is.
I'm actually in Siem Reap in Cambodia. So it's a lovely little town with Angkor Wat, one of the wonders of the world. And it's a really magical place that I'm blessed to live in with my family.
How long have you lived there?
I've actually been here 14 years.
Whoa.
So I speak the local language. I feel very much part of the community here. And it really does feel like home.
And you were born in England, I think.
Yes. I was born in Oxford in the UK, and I came out to Cambodia in my mid-20s. Initially as a teacher, and then it kind of evolved over time to me caring more and more about mental health and people's well-being. So that was my evolution.
That's absolutely lovely. So we've got a sense of where you are externally in this particular moment. And now we're going to find out, have a little sense, a little peek inside where you are at the moment through your dream, which I think you had last night. But as always with my guests, I don't know what dream you're bringing me. So this is news to my ears as you speak it. So what did you dream?
Okay, so it was with a friend. I knew she was a friend, but she's unidentifiable in real life. And we were at a hair salon. There were two men who were being served before us, even though she was waiting beforehand. So she should have been served, but they were chosen, even though it was a similar kind of haircut. She just needed a trim, and so did they, and she actually had short hair. And then the hairdresser, who is Cambodian, insisted that I get injections into my cheeks. And that was something that she insisted, and she did. And she made it seem like it was free. But then she charged me, but it wasn't a large amount, and I just happily paid and left. Then I got into a car, but this time with a different friend who is identifiable from my life, who I actually know. I was driving in the car, and then I began to feel like I'd been drugged. I was totally out of it, and I felt like we shouldn't be driving right now. But I was scared to stop the car because I felt like if I stopped and left the car in the middle of the road, the police would then know I was guilty. And I remember saying to that friend, this has happened to another friend before. They did this. They left the car in the middle of the road, and then the police knew that they were guilty. So we keep driving. I tell myself to pull myself together as much as I can, but it's becoming daytime and the roads are getting busier, and we're almost reaching a dual carriageway, which is, a busy road. And it seems like we're on the wrong side of the road. So there's cars beginning to come towards us. But my friend insists that we're not on the wrong side of the road. And I just want somewhere to stop the car, but it seems like it's getting more and more difficult to stop the car. And then I wake up.
Whoa, how did you feel when you woke up?
Well, to be honest, I was actually really happy that I had a dream that I could remember, and I quickly began writing.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was also a sense, I think, of panic, because it was a situation that I wanted to get out of, and I couldn't. Yes.
So the whole dream was about, well, it wasn't just the end of the second part of the dream was a situation you couldn't get out of. And in a sense, the beginning of the dream, there was a situation where you weren't being treated in the way that you should be treated either. Yeah. And there were two insists. Did you notice yourself say insist twice? In the beginning, the hairdresser insisted on injecting your cheeks. And the second half of the dream, the friend that you do know insisted that you were not on the wrong side of the road. So there's a bit of insistence going along there.
There was, and that I can see that now. Now that you say it, I can see that.
Yeah, we'll come back to what that might mean in a minute, but quite interesting to note. So the first one was a kind of dream friend, and the second one was a friend that you did know, without naming that friend, just to get a feel for that person. How do you see them? Like, what's their personality or approach to life in maybe 2 or 3 words?
They're positive. They're discovering who they are, and they haven't learned to truly validate their own experiences yet.
Mm. So they're positive, they're discovering who they are, but the thing that's missing for them at the moment is validating their own experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah. And yet this person in the dream was quite insistent that you were not on the wrong side of the road, that everything was fine. Did you get the feeling in the dream that, I wonder if she's right? I don't know whether she's a she, or was it like she is definitely wrong here?
It was, I wonder if she's right. I hope she's right. There's reassurance that she's saying I'm not on the wrong side of the road. But cars are beginning to come towards me.
Yeah. So I was interested in that bit because it kind of sits all around that question of not validating experiences. A part of you is going, maybe she's right. Maybe this is an experience I haven't had and she has, and she knows what she's doing. On the other hand, maybe she's not validating her experiences, and her experiences, therefore she's got the wrong information. She should be judging by what's actually happening. And all this stuff, these cars are coming at us. There's a kind of a question mark over that little bit there. Because it can be very helpful to look at everyone in a dream as representing an aspect of yourself. So it's like there's a part of yourself that is obviously very positive because you are, that is discovering interesting things about yourself and life, which of course you are, but that may at the moment, may or may not be working on validating your experiences, which is kind of what we do when we're going through anything new, isn't it? Am I really experiencing this? Does this match with what I thought about life?
That really resonates. That's exactly right. And what was interesting is I really did want to believe her. I really wanted to believe that she was right, but everything, the evidence that was being presented in front of me, which was to the contrary.
Yes. So you got the feeling that the experience to validate was the fact that the traffic was coming towards you and you were on the wrong side of the road.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the dream you referenced this has happened to somebody else before. Just while we're talking about this, is there any familiarity just around this light question about whether this has been in your life before, this situation?
Yes. There's somebody I know who had a child who was driving and they had been under the influence and they did take someone's life.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that is something that happened that must have been somehow there.
So there's a sense of in the dream you remembered something that was really, really traumatic and important. And our dreams often go for huge drama anyway, just to drive home a tiny point. So there could be the feeling too, like, oh, this is a potentially traumatic life stage in my life. I really need to get this right about validating the experience that I'm in. Is the sense that let's forget about cars at the moment. Let's forget about traffic. Let's just get the sense that all this stuff is coming into my life, and I feel like I'm questioning whether I'm going the right way or the wrong way, and I'm really worried about whether this could have a deep traumatic, what should I do about it? Does that sort of ring a bell?
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say that dreams make it, they really highlight and bring out the dramaticness of the situation because that really does make sense.
Yeah, it's because when we're awake, the front of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, basically keeps everything under control, keeps everything nicely edited, tells the emotions to go down there, step away. When you're dreaming, when you're sleeping, the prefrontal cortex is not really working at all. So your emotions are like, yeah, here I am. Oh, God, I'm really going to express myself. So emotions that we may or feelings that we may be only subtly aware of during the day really get to come out and play. And that's great. That happens for all of us, and it can be really good to find out, okay, what are we really feeling that we're coping with in life, and uncovering that. So noting there's a bit of insistence in your dreams. It's possible that you are, as we all do, insisting on this is how I live my life. This is how I look at life. I'm sure that this is the way to do things, but I'm not so sure, but I am insistent. It's like insistence is coming up for questioning and for curiosity. Now, this is just a 10-minute dip into your dream. It's not an hour, so I'm not going to say a lot more, but I did want to go to the beginning of the dream where there's these two guys who snuck in to get their trims before you. The girl. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes the men in our dreams as a woman can represent our male side, our yang. So there could be a sense at the beginning of the dream that at the time of the dream you might have been prioritizing business, work, yang kind of things, putting those in ahead of your true needs. And then even when you get there, you don't actually get what you want. You did get the trim, but then she insisted that she injected to your cheeks as well. You go, yeah, okay, that's okay. I'll go with that. I'll go with the flow. But it wasn't really what you asked for. So there's a sense of maybe putting other things ahead of what you really want and then kind of accepting what comes in. But did you, last question, did you feel that the sense of being drugged in the car, did you think in the dream that was to do with having your cheeks injected or not?
Well, that's a very good question. I think I was beginning to make a possible link, but not initially. Wasn't a direct correlation that I saw initially, but I have a feeling that as the dream continued, I was beginning to put two and two together.
Yeah. So if we took a very light, over the top, kind of curious look in, we might say that at the time of the dream, because we're all different on different days, at the time of the dream, I was maybe prioritizing other things like business or work. I wasn't prioritizing myself. I was kind of accepting whatever went and paying for whatever happens to me. But what this is doing is kind of drugging me to some extent. I'm less awake. I'm drugged into just going along and finding suddenly that everything is coming at me, the traffic, everything is coming at me. And I'm questioning, am I on the right path, the wrong path? There's a part of me saying, which experiences do I validate, particularly if I'm feeling a bit drugged, if I'm drugging myself by putting myself not first.
Wow.
In what way am I clouding my perception about which experiences to validate and clouding my perception about which is the right way to go? So I'm going to hand it over to you to comment, but I'm not going to go into the deep 1 hour dive we do. I'm just handing it back to you just to kind of tie that one up so far.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said completely resonates. This past week, I've actually gone from being in Thailand on holiday, to coming back to Cambodia where I live. And I really have had some realizations that, wow, my life has been so fast because I've come back and people saying, oh, will we do this week? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? And I thought, oh, wow, I really was living a fast-paced life because the amount of responsibilities, and I've been signing up to things that maybe I don't really want to, and sometimes pausing the connection to my soul, which I really desire. So this really does resonate a lot.
That's really lovely. And if you wanted to work on that from an unconscious point of view, you can do something as simple as reimagining you're back in the dream, but this time be going in the same direction as the traffic and lessening the traffic so there's not as much of it, so there's less pressure, and summoning up a feeling of the opposite to being drugged. I'm really wide awake. I'm really in touch with my soul and my spirit, and I really have the sense that this is the right path. So you're reversing that sense in the dream and asking your unconscious mind to come back with where you want to be aligned. So this is lovely, because what I'm hearing you say is that the value that we can all get by stepping back. You went on holiday and that was great. You know, sometimes we just need to step back a bit from life to see it differently, don't we? And I guess in many ways that's what you also do with your clients, is you're the person that steps back and looks in. And particularly because it's a spiritual dimension that you're interested in, this recent experiences has reminded you of that as well, of the importance of, you want what you just said just now, you want to be, I'm putting different words on it, soul aligned, and that's what you bring your clients. So it's quite a nice sort of end of holiday gift, really, wasn't it?
I think it was actually the biggest gift. Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. That really, really resonates.
It's an absolute pleasure. So would you like to give us a little bit more of an idea of how you work? I know that you say that one of the big keys of your work is self-compassion, or helping people towards self-compassion. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I really like helping individuals be fully aligned with their values and what their purpose is in this life, and to really use mindfulness, meditation, breath work, visualization to help provide direction, to remove obstacles they may be facing, and ultimately to connect with what their core values are.
Yeah, that's really lovely, because we often set our values, don't we? And then life goes by and things change, and we're still sticking to maybe old values, or not noticing that we've shifted and changed. So that's a lovely beginning point.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then one thing that struck me when we had a little chat before we began last week, you said that, one of the things that you really enjoy is helping people to understand the spiritual reason behind events. So I know our listeners would love to hear more about that, and you may even have an example or two up your sleeve. I'm not sure. How do you help people to understand? A lot of people say, yeah, there's a spiritual reason behind that event, but I just can't figure out what it is. So how do you help people to do that?
Yeah. So there's always things that happen in, in the 3D world that we're seeing and the events that are playing out, and we get triggered. And those triggers, those things that happen, are ultimately showing us reflections of ourselves. And I can give an example. I've got a lovely person who stayed with me recently, and they kept always speaking in their own language very loudly and not really acknowledging me much. And my ego really wanted to react and tell them, this isn't right, this isn't polite, this isn't how you should act. And I really had to look at why this was playing out in my movie and ask myself, why is this in my story? And there's a gift behind it. And the gift is it's an opportunity for me to expand my love and compassion and to understand why people choose to act or why people act the way that they do. So every opportunity that you're presented with gives you a chance to expand spiritually and to build your consciousness and awareness and to ultimately be more like the light.
That's so lovely. And you were able to work that out for yourself, which is quite amazing because it's usually very hard to look at our own stuff. So well done on that. How do you help your clients do you have a kind of, as you listen to their stories, do you have an intuitive feeling for what the reason is that they're or do you, and how do you cope with it? Do you ask them questions? Do you tell them? How do you approach that thing? How do you help them to understand?
Yes. So a lot of the work that I do would be, some inner child work initially. So working through healing the parts of themselves that were not accepted, seen, or valued as a child, and building awareness of the different wounds that we all have. Because once we start becoming aware of what those wounds are, we then have the power to stop living from them and making choices from those wounds. And that would be things like embodiment and somatic work. Also shifting belief patterns. So looking at who we are beyond the stories that we've been told. Who are we really? And then doing things like breath work, journaling, meditation, and being seen and held in this unique space so that there are chances to shift these belief patterns. So inner child work, shifting belief patterns, nervous system regulation as well, nurturing an awareness of what's happening in your body, and when you begin to become unregulated, and then creating that dialogue of, well, what would soothe me right now? What do I need? And just building that early recognition. So it's a lot of work with the nervous system as well.
I really love that. It must be, from your point of view, also very interesting to work from all those different angles and dynamics. Do you with each client, do you maybe choose this avenue or another client a different avenue, or do you have a kind of step by step that you tend to go through?
Yeah, it really is like lots of different tools in my toolbox. And when the client comes, I'm just open and then I just allow whatever tool needs to come. And yes, at this stage, there's no step by step. For me now, it's really just being intuitive with what each client needs and working organically with that. I can see that may shift in the future. But right now, it's really being intuitive with that.
It's probably the best way to go. And also, even if you do work out a step-by-step approach to maybe help other people go through it, in the end of the day, you'll be back on the intuitive approach, because the intuitive part of you will just go, yes, I know these steps, and I can just jump straight to the end. I believe intuition, in many cases, is actually unconsciously following steps that you already know. You just haven't mined them and named them. You can just go straight there. You're drawing on that knowledge already. I thought you were going to say, when you said at the beginning, at the moment, was the effect of it. At the moment, I don't do step by step. I was expecting you to say, but I'm going to do a step by step because I'm going to run some courses and want to teach people the step by step. But you didn't go down that track.
Maybe on the next podcast.
Maybe on the next one. When you do work with people, I presume you work virtually as well as in person.
Yes, most of my clients are virtually, literally all around the world, America, Australia, Europe. So I've got good at knowing different time zones.
Speaking from Hobart, yeah, it is really complicated, isn't it? I think more people will know where you live than where I live. Working out, but your and my time zones are only like 3 or 4 hours, depending on the time of the year apart. It gets really complicated with America, and it's sometimes quite difficult for people to understand that we're in the day ahead than where they are.
Yes.
It's quite a step. There are increasingly different therapies out there in the world claiming quite quick fix approaches.
Yes.
I know that's not you. It's not me. And I was struck by one thing you said when we chatted last week. You said it's often about patience, that, you maybe go through some changes and you've got to allow time for those changes to integrate. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would. I think integration and compassion during the integration process are really important, because I do believe we can make realizations sometimes very quickly, but then it's the allowing for the uncovering of how those realizations integrate in the real world. So it's really looking at being kind with yourself as you navigate new territory sometimes, and you navigate maybe finding your voice. So that can often take time. And I think, just being compassionate with yourself along the way can really help. And knowing that progress isn't always linear, so we can make realizations, and then sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves that, okay, now I need to do this, this, and this, or, but I feel like I've just gone a step backwards. You haven't gone backwards. You're just learning and evolving and figuring out how to shift. So it's just being kind on the journey.
Yeah, it's a lovely sense, isn't that you can suddenly become aware of a belief or a limiting belief, and then it's not just taking the time to integrate, as you said, and it's also that realization, I guess, of just how much of your life this impacts. So you've got, I see now how that's operating in my work. Oh, I see how that's operating. Oh, I see how that's operating. And I look back to my past and I look back to my future, and I imagine a lot of the conversations that you have with people are them coming to you the next day or the next week and saying, I've just realised that it's operating there. So do you kind of guide them through all those observations and, help them to see, yeah, that's right. Yes, yes, yes. Acknowledging.
Yes. Yes, a lot of acknowledgement, because sometimes clients don't see how much they've progressed, or they realise that they've progressed, but they don't see the full extent. And it's sometimes holding a mirror and saying, do you realize what you've just done? Do you realize that you've just set a boundary that 2 weeks ago you wouldn't have dreamt of setting? So it's really holding the mirror for them to see. And then for me, it's just so humbling when I get to see their reaction to that, and to see them honoring themselves and acknowledging themselves, and that's a beautiful thing to be part of.
Yeah, so the things that appear little to them, you reflect back to them, these are huge. It's these little course corrections that can make a great big difference in your life.
Exactly.
Do you have any, I know, we all work confidentially with our clients, but do you have any stories that you can tell as examples of how you've worked with people?
Yes, yes. I mean, I had a client who came to me and they felt like something wasn't quite right in their life. They had a great job, they had a lovely family, and they felt like it should be enough. But that feeling that something wasn't right just kept getting stronger and stronger. And that's when they came to me. And we did some visioning. So we began by looking at, okay, something's not quite right. If you were to arrive on another planet that was starting again, what would your role truly be? Who are you beyond the social conditioning? And even those visionary exercises, they held a lot of power. And things started to shift very early on for this client. But then we looked at some inner child work and looked at this core wound of not being good enough, which was actually where this client was operating from. So the visioning and the inner child work and the embodiment really helped to further shift things. But then we had to look at also the unconscious programming that this client had, the stories that they'd been told about who they were, and we did a lot of breath work with that as well, and some meditation, which they continued between sessions. And this client actually left their corporate job and they set up a company that aligns with their own values and mission in life. And they've actually also become a spiritual coach.
Oh, fantastic.
So yes, that's in the space of a year and a half. So that's amazing. And that client's come to me and then left for a while and then, continued and then come back to me, shifted and left for a while. So it's really beautiful. Different clients always need different things.
Yes, there's that sense of it's not a person necessarily saying, I'm going to see you every week for a year and a half. It's I'll see you till I get this adjustment or shift, and then I'll go away and work with that. And then I realise I need you for the next step and then go away. And you get to go along for the ride as well as the guiding of them.
I know. It's amazing. It's such an amazing privilege that I get to experience that and to go along for the ride, as you say.
I loved you. I loved your opening question. If you arrived on an alien planet, what was the? Can you go through the question again?
Yeah. So it's if you landed on another planet that was completely starting over again, what would your role be? Who would you be? There was no social conditioning. There were no expectations on you. You'd be free to play any role that you wished in any part of the planet with any community you wanted. You may not even want to be with the community. Maybe you'd be alone. But what would that look like and how would it feel to be fully living in alignment with what you wanted to be doing? And sometimes it takes a visionary exercise like that where you are arriving on another planet, because that can really help to open something up.
Yes, it's absolutely beautiful. And people listening, why don't you press pause and go through that yourself before, but come back to us because it's so beautiful. And it was so beautifully delivered there as well. You were talking it through almost as if you were talking to someone in a hypnotic state. Do you just get people to breathe and close their eyes, or do you put them under a bit of hypnosis when you do this?
I do get them to just breathe, ground, close their eyes, and then I also am breathing, grounding, and then I start to channel whatever needs to come through that will help the client make the shifts that they need to make. So again, the questions I'm asking are usually very intuitive and based on the energy that I'm feeling at the time. And it's almost like I'm trying to unlock a box and I've got lots of different keys, and it's almost like I'm asking the questions that will help me find the key that will unlock the box.
And help them find the key that unlocks the box and be unlocked as well. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so when you do that sense of, you use the word channeling there, what do you envisage is happening? Are you channeling your intuitive self, or you picturing that you're channeling something else? Do you have a visualization for yourself about what you're channeling? Just because you used the word channeling.
Yes, that's a really, really good question. I would say it's channeling my intuitive self. It's channeling my intuitive self. Exactly.
And it's when we're really, really busy that's hard to do, like just a momentary reflection back to your dream. When all the traffic's coming at you, it's really hard to ground and channel your intuitive self, isn't it, as well?
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this space so unique, because the reality is that sometimes outside of this space, there can be very few opportunities for many of us, including me, to have that moment to ground, to connect, to align. So I think the more opportunities collectively we can give ourselves to really be able to be still and to have that level of presence, it's always going to be a gift to ourselves and to others.
It's lovely, and I'm thinking here, because I of course also work over Zoom most of the time, and sometimes when people ask what I do and they're not used to Zoom, they think, "Well, how do you do that? If I came to see someone, I'd want to be in the same room as them." I mean, that's so artificial, and I think, well, no, actually, you and I guess our clients have got so accustomed to it that it's not artificial. You feel like you're in the same room as the person, and you can if you know what you're doing, which clearly you do, you can create that space. And the person no longer thinks, I'm sitting at my desk looking down the computer or looking at my iPhone. I'm actually in the room with Gemma. I'm not in the room with Gemma. I'm in some kind of other planet with Gemma. I'm in this different space. And you can be in the middle of, New York, London, Australia, China, anywhere. Or you can be a few streets along from you in Siem Reap. But you're on Zoom, and you can have a quieter, better space there than maybe if you met in a counselling studio or they came to see you. I don't know. Would you like to? How long has it taken? I mean, I remember the first, because I've been in talking with people worldwide for like 30 odd years. With phones, and then it was Skype, and then it was Zoom, and each time you came to a new thing, it was like hard getting used to this thing, and it would feel artificial to begin with until you suddenly slipped into it. What was the journey like for you with Zoom, and how quickly did it take you to work out how to use that as a therapeutic and welcoming space?
Well, luckily, so 3 years ago when I started, a lot of my clients Zoom was already a thing. So,
Yes.
and to be honest, so I guess I'm fortunate in that way that I've only ever known Zoom, or this has been the main portal from the beginning that I was using. But I will say that I was also seeing people in person as well at the time. I've had a lot of people in person.
Yeah.
And for me, what was remarkable was that there wasn't a difference in the impact. And then equally being on the receiving end of many different types of therapies, and different ways of connecting to myself. Being on the receiving end, I also noticed that there was no difference for me. So that's been an amazing revelation. And it's amazing that we have that now.
Yes.
It is an amazing tool.
A little bit thanks to COVID, that one, Zoom.
Yes.
In terms of people embracing it and becoming more comfortable with it. Yeah. Would you have any other little stories for us?
Yes. I could also talk about another client of mine. And when I give these kind of case studies, these are kind of also talking about a lot of patterns I've seen with many clients, but just talking about a client that I've had who was suffering from low self-esteem, and second guessing themselves a lot, as well as being quite anxious in group settings. And with this client, I really started with the inner child work. So really looking at, seeing and valuing herself, themselves as a child, and building awareness of the am I enough wound. And then, learning to love and nurture those parts. But then we also looked at internal family systems, which was really revelationary for this client, because it was the awareness of, is this voice really mine? Whose voice am I really hearing? What does my own voice even sound like? So building awareness of what is yours energetically and what is theirs. And in this case, it was the voice of somebody close in their family who've been quite critical. And then looking again at some nervous system regulation. So nurturing the awareness of what happens when my nervous system starts to become unregulated. And actually, I can soothe it. I can give myself what I need. That is valid. It doesn't mean I'm a failure if I stop doing what's expected of me and honor and nurture myself. So again, building that early regulation. And as a result, the client feels a lot more grounded. And I think what's been the most powerful thing is that they're able to separate their self-worth from the stories that they internalized about their worth as a child. And I think that's been one of the most powerful shifts for that client.
That's beautiful. And it took you, not only with your tools and techniques, but being a step away from that person to be able to look in and ask the right questions and help them to see and to hear those, and separate those voices, which is my voice, which are voices that I've learned from other people. And that must be, you used the word revelationary. It must be such a revelation when you've been living with these voices for years and years and years without realizing or without awakening to the fact that, hey, that's not me actually. That's my dad, mum, school teacher, brother, whoever.
Exactly. And that awareness can be so powerful. So powerful.
That's beautiful work. We've probably got time for one more. You're such a good storyteller. I'm just wondering if you've got another one up your sleeve.
I don't think I do, actually. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I would just give me more, Gemma. Give me more.
Oh, yes,
No.
I should have prepared another one.
No, that's really lovely. When you're not working with your clients, when you're taking time for yourself, when you're not on holiday in Thailand, how do you nurture yourself?
That's a very good question. So I do like to do breath work. Sometimes in the evenings when I put my children to bed, I like to do some breath work, which really can help me. And it can actually get me into an altered state at times where I can begin to get messages that come down. And they can be very messages that are very guiding and coming from a wise place. That can be helpful. Meditation is always my go-to. Meditation has helped me so much. I also have my own coach so that I can keep evolving and expanding. I actually have two coaches. So I have a spiritual coach and then just another coach that I see too. Having a spiritual coach for me is incredibly important because it's the lens through which I see everything. I don't just see this realm. There's always a higher meaning behind everything, and everything is for you and your soul to grow and evolve from. So having my own spiritual coach is incredibly helpful. And there's many practices as well as keeping fit, exercising, releasing, giving myself opportunities to keep releasing and expanding, because this isn't, for me, this is ever growing work. This is something that I'm committed to for my whole life. So the work doesn't stop, and I love that.
I love that too. I think a lot of people, when they begin on a journey like this, misunderstand that. They think, I'm going to go along, I'm going to get this fixed, and then everything's going to be fine. And everything will be better. But then, of course, there's always a next step and a next step. And then once you click over and ask yourself those questions, why am I here? What's my purpose? The other planet question, then that adds a whole other dimension, doesn't it? And then you see the endless journey, or the reason why you're here.
Exactly, exactly. It's just that the questions keep coming and they just shift and shift again. And your consciousness expands, but then there'll be challenges that will come and meet you at that new level of consciousness. So it's ever evolving.
And I love the way that you've naturally used the word challenges there, of course, not problems or issues. You've got challenges that come up at your new level of consciousness, which is spot on.
Exactly. I have tried as much as I can to eradicate the word problems from my vocabulary as well as mistakes. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean that I never say them because sometimes they slip in, but we're all just evolving. We're all learning together.
Yes. And you've demonstrated that so beautifully through your stories, and also through the fact that you have your own coaches, and through your dream. You know, one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast and getting to know people through their dreams is that our listeners are learning from other people's dreams as well. You know, yes, our dreams are about ourselves, but we can always learn something about ourselves through other people's stories, and particularly through their dreams, because we're all human. We go through similar situations. So people listening are not only getting some dream interpretation tips, they're actually learning from your dream, and not just from your dream, Gemma, from everything that you've given us today as well. And sharing those aspects of yourself. Is there anything that you would like to add before we close today?
I feel that you've really covered so much and it's been beautiful. So I think all I can say really is that I really appreciate the fact that you interpreted my dream and in those 10 minutes, it was just so rich. And there's so much that I could take away from that. So for me, you've really left me with a lot of food for thought.
That's
So
lovely.
thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everything that you've brought to me, the enjoyment of doing this, and for all our listeners. How can they contact you? What's their best? I will have your website address in the show notes, but would you actually like to tell them while they've got their headphones on and they're listening?
Yes. Yes, my website is Gemma with a G, Gemma Louise Coaching.com. And I also have an Instagram, which is Gemma_Louise Coaching. So they can find me on Instagram or my website.
And having had a quick look at your Instagram website, I know you do lots of video clips, which is something I don't do and I really should do. And it's really lovely because people can then come, even though we've recorded this over Zoom and I'm watching you, this only goes out as an audio, but people can actually go along and see you in action on your website or on Instagram as well.
Yes, yes, I do. I do post quite regularly, actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Gemma, for being a lovely guest.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, how did you go with the planet question? I hope you came up with some really interesting thoughts to follow there. That was a lovely conversation with Gemma Louise. And if you'd like to be a guest on the Dream Show, remember there are two formats. You can either come on totally anonymous, just with a name and a place where you live. And in that case, we spend the whole 45 minutes or an hour just looking at your dream and seeing how it relates to your life. So really going very deep into our dream. Or there's this new format, which I'm really enjoying, which is where you come on as a guest, not anonymously, and we spend just 10 minutes on your dream, and then we focus on what you're doing in life, what you're bringing to people. And it's an opportunity. It's really, I look at it as it's a kind of almost a conventional podcast interview. Well, maybe not conventional. It's a podcast interview, but with the added advantage of people being able to get a bit of a insight into your inner world. And of course, if clients are going to come and work with you or buy your books or whatever your service or product is that you've got to offer, these days I think it's really lovely if they've had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit on the inside as well. So this is an opportunity through a dream to share a little bit of your inner world, as well as to contribute to the dream show in terms of helping our audience, worldwide audience, learn more about how to approach dreams and understand their dreams and the value that they can contribute to your life. If you'd like to visit Gemma Louise, I'll just repeat her 2 contact points. Her website is Gemma with a G and 2 M's, so gemmalouisecoaching.com. That's Gemma Louise Coaching, all one word, .com. Or you can go to her Instagram account, and her handle there is Gemma_Louise_coaching. And my website's janeteresa.com, where you can go to find, you can listen to every episode of the Dream Show that's ever been. You can read about 300 or so blogs on dreams and dreaming that I've written. You can find out about my books about dreams, as well as my latest fiction book. And you can find out how to consult me about your dreams. And you can find out how to be a guest on the Dream Show. So if you go to janeteresa.com, go to the menu, go to podcast, go to drop down box, and you'll see be a guest on the Dream Show. So you can approach me that way. I also, of course, do courses on dreams. So you can go to my course platform, which is the Dream Academy, and the address for that is dream-academy-online.com, or you can get there from janeteresa.com. And that's it. Thank you for listening to yet another episode of The Dream Show, and I look forward to bringing you another one in 4 weeks' time. Have a beautiful month. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson.